Okay, so let's have a look at some of the paintings that we have on offer in our sale of important Irish art on Wednesday, the 24th of March. First one here is a work by George Russell, otherwise known as AE, and it is called Bidding Farewell. It's very monochromatic, there's a green hue to it, but there's lovely, interesting group of figures here, these three, and they're obviously bidding farewell to whoever, and then there's another couple of figures there in the background. It's a little bit gloomy in terms of the tone and the colour, but it's very evocative at the same time. So next one here is a wonderful painting by Frederick Osbourne in this magnificent gilded frame. And it's a picture which until recently we had thought was a work called Moonrise, painted in 1893, but Dr. Julian Campbell, who is the expert on Osbourne, has suggested that it might be a picture that was also painted in 1893 called Peaceful Eve. And he reckons that it was painted somewhere in the sort of South County Dublin area around Carrickmines, obviously before it was as built up as it is nowadays. But there's this lovely sense of walking into the field, and the sheep who were just minding their own business are turning around to look at who's coming into the field. But again, this beautiful treatment of the clouds and the late evening light and the moon rising there above the landscape. The estimate on that is 40 to 60,000. So moving on, the next picture on the wall here is a nice early work by Butler Yates. We reckon it's painted around about 1912, and it's called Gathering Seaweed, County Mayo. It is estimated at 50 to 70,000 euro. Again, wonderful sort of sense of movement here in the waves, and you have this solitary figure gathering the seaweed to put up on top of the cart, and the horse there standing to attention and waiting for his instructions. But there's a great sense of the activity and the movement, particularly in the treatment of the water. So the next work here, also by Butler Yates, but a much later work. It's from 1943, and it's called The Bell of Chinatown. And it's a picture which references Yates's much earlier visit to New York when he was a younger man, around about the 1910-1915 period. And it, as you can see, this figure of this small child in a sort of like a much larger coat than she should be wearing, but she's wearing one of these beautiful hats that she's obviously just either bought or just taken off this stand with the old man there who's selling the hats. And as you can see on the little placard there, they are 5 cents. And this dark section of the painting is obviously, it's a sort of a side street which is in shadow, and it focuses our minds very much on this lovely little figure, and it's a very, very cute little picture, beautifully painted. And what's interesting is that he was about 72 or 73 years of age when he painted this, and Yates was obviously at that stage becoming probably even more conscious of the idea of youth and age as he was getting into that later stage of his life. And the estimate on that is 120 to 180,000. Nice little work by Walter Osbourne here, painted in the area around Rye in Sussex. And it's a lovely figure here in this boat, but also another one here, and the boats which are up on the side of the river with some houses. But again, very typical of that sort of early period in Osbourne's work. Next to that is this magnificent work by Sir John Lavery, and it's a work from 1920 and painted in Tangier in northern Africa. And Lavery had first visited Morocco before the turn of the century and was very much taken with it, and he loved this area outside Tangier and this white city, which appears in quite a number of his pictures. And this scene captures a sort of that sort of early evening when it's beginning to cool down a little bit, and you've got and this was painted on the top of on the roof of his hotel. So you get these couple of musicians here sitting down, and the dancer who was providing the entertainment is just taking a little rest. But there's a lovely sense of the sort of just that time of the day in a North African landscape. The estimate on that, as far as I can recall, is 30 to 50,000 euro. Next to that is another George Russell, and it is a beautiful picture, lovely and colourful. You've got this wonderful sweep of the bay here, and the figures on this little rocky outcrop of three girls who are struggling with the force of the wind. And again, he captures that wonderfully with the billowing cloak that one of the girls is holding up. It's almost like as if she's about to take off with her parachute. The next picture there is a rather cute little work by Paul Henry, painted around about 1910 or so, before he went to Ackel. We don't know who the figure is. Now it's quite a small little portrait, as you can see, but it's quite interesting. And Brian Kennedy dates it, as I say, to around about 1910, and we have it estimated at 8 to 12,000 euro. Now, work from slightly earlier than that is a very, very rare work by Catherine McCausland, painted in 1890, and it's called Serving Dinner. And McCausland studied at the Académie Julienne in Paris. She was friendly with Frank O'Mara, with John Lavery and others. Again, it's wonderfully painted. She also, around this time, had moved to Concarneau, where she actually bought a house and lived for the rest of her life. She died in 1930. But you can see this very, very handsome treatment of this figure here of the old lady feeding the two children. And then in the background, you've got this, in the shadows, you've got this portrait of an elderly man who's looking onto the subject. But the light coming through the window, catching the little vase of daffodils there and bringing the light in onto the figures, which captures the woman's face really brilliantly, but also the back of the figure, and also the chair and the rush seat. So absolutely wonderful, wonderful painting. And again, a very spectacular frame there. Our estimate on this picture is 25 to 35,000.